All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Hamish Mackenzie. Thank you for joining us for today's IIoT World Special event, a digital transformation blueprint, learn to scale with Lindt. It is October the 31st, and I can promise you that this Halloween we will be avoiding any spooky tricks and instead be focusing on the sweet treat that is chocolate manufacturing. Apologies, Tori, if you're listening, that's the best I could do. So first off, to everybody who's joining us, it would be great if you could tell us who you are in the chat, where you are. It's always nice to get a feel for who's joining us. And while you do that and get settled in, grab a coffee, perhaps some chocolate as well. Just a few bits of housekeeping to get us started. The session is going to last an hour. I'm sure you're all aware of that. I'm going to be introducing the topic and our guest speakers, and we'll be getting a lot of valuable insights. We will try and leave some time at the end for questions if we can, but it's a very intense topic today, but we'll do the best we can. And so if you do have any questions, please get them into the Q&A function in the platform here. Don't put them in the chat because it makes it harder for me to find them, and it's more likely you'll get your questions answered if you get them in the Q&A function. So please do that. With that said, I think it's time to focus on the session today. So I'm going to be moderating a discussion between these great operational leaders that we have with us from Lindt, HighByte, and Snowflake, focused on the people, processes, and technology that drive successful digital transformation in manufacturing. So we're very lucky we have Jessica Valli with us today, who's the Digital Transformation Manager at Lindt Sprüngli, and she's going to be sharing her experience specifically on driving a digitalization project at Lindt, right from the RFP through to deployment and global rollout as well to multiple sites. And we're going to have a very dynamic, fluid discussion today between all of us in terms of, how getting some insights on how these modern architectures and technologies from the edge to the cloud can help scale these kind of projects in particular. We're going to hear about a proven template to progress from ideation and evaluation to execution within the kind of decentralized organization that they have at Lindt. We're going to talk about how to build that RFP and the project timeline. We're going to talk about scaling. And we're really going to try and understand how to do that quickly as well, because Lindt has managed to scale this solution across multiple sites much more quickly than most manufacturers would be able to. So we're going to get into that a little bit as well. So that's what we're going to be discussing. And before we get into it, I just want to briefly introduce our very special guest speakers today. First up, we have John Harrington, who's Chief Product Officer at HighByte, who's also the sponsor of this session, and he is focused on defining HighByte's company, the business strategy, but also the product strategy. His areas of responsibility are product management, customer success, partner success, and the whole go-to-market strategy. So he's a very busy man. And John is very passionate about delivering technology that improves productivity and safety across all sorts of different manufacturing and industrial environments. So it's great to have John with us again. He's very often appears on these events, and really interested to get his insights. Next, we have another. You're very welcome, John. Next, we have another IIoT world veteran in Pugal Janakiraman, who's the industry field CTO for manufacturing at Snowflake. And Pugal is focused on driving the solution vision for manufacturing by mapping technology components from Snowflake and the partner ecosystem to build higher order solutions within the manufacturing area. And he's been doing this for the last two decades. He's been working with CXOs across all sorts of different industries, automotive, trucking, heavy machinery, aerospace, healthcare, oil and gas, and really helping them transform their traditional industrial processes with the latest technologies. He's also a sponsor for key transformation initiatives, and he's an IEEE contributing member for digital twin standards for manufacturing as well. So thank you very much for joining us for this, Pugal.
Thank you.
And next, as I already teased a little bit at the beginning, we have Jessica Valli, who's Digital Transformation Program Manager at Lindt. She's focused on the company's industrial performance, and since joining in 2012, she's been instrumental in several digitization projects, including the Autonomous Process Control POC and the ideation, development, and execution of the Cyber Physical System Program. She's a very curious and creative problem solver who spent the last decade of her career leading a variety of these kind of digitalization programs for production lines and processes. And we're really going to be getting into the weeds on that in this session. So I think we're all very excited about that. Very few brief words about me, definitely the least important person in the room. I'm a former IDC analyst. I've been running my consulting practice from Munich in Germany since 2006. And I walk alongside CEOs, founders, and other senior executives in industrial and software and hardware companies, really helping them improve their growth efficiency specifically, right across their businesses. But I also help them become more effective leaders by helping them focus on strategy and evangelizing, which is what the CEO should really be all about, and helping them get themselves a little bit out of day-to-day operations. As I'm sure many of you know, it's very easy to get sucked into that. So that's what I do. If you want to connect with me, then please look me up on LinkedIn. There's only one of me, one Hamish in Munich, as far as I know, so it shouldn't be too hard to find me. And with all of that done, let's get into the main discussion. So as I said at the beginning, I want to keep this very interactive and fluid. So John and Pugal are also going to be asking questions as they come up, because they're also experts in their areas, and they're also very keen to learn more about how things have worked specifically at Lindt. But I want to start off really just by going to Jessica directly, and so we can just set some context in terms of the project at Lindt. So Jessica, if I can ask you to just describe, firstly, what was the situation before this project got underway, and what were really the key business drivers behind starting it? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that to get us started.
Yeah, sure. I think what's very important to know is that Lindt is a very traditional company. It's a 175 plus years existing chocolate company, and we grew due to acquisition over the years. So that means we have definitely brownfield. So digitalization was made in every site by themselves. It was tools everywhere spread around. So what we did in the past was at least some tools we standardized, like having the same ERP system, having the same process control system. And we started about a decade ago with lean management. So lean manufacturing, what really helped to kind of have a standard already. But digitalization was really, as I said, different in every site. So when it comes to the key business drivers, or also I would say key stakeholders, is important is that we as a Lindt group decided we have to somehow standardize. I think that was like one of the first steps to address this topic, driven by the lean management, make people understand that if you have these pillars of lean management, the foundation somehow also needs to be digitalization. And that's where we have started. So it really was management driven. But yeah, I think it's also good to understand what the needs were from a business perspective. I mean, Lindt has a lot of machinery, a big machine park. So all kind of different generations can be from the 97 up to 2024. So a lot of different generations of machines. So you can imagine if we have downtimes of the machines, that means a lot of financial loss. Or we produce chocolate with natural goods, so the quality of this raw material can vary over the year, can vary between the countries. So to have a high quality standard means we have to measure a lot, and the more we can automate or digitalize, the more efficient we are. And also the amount of paperwork. I think that's also something which comes to the mind of a lot of people. With all the regulations getting more and more, also the paperwork gets more and more. So it was kind of obvious also for skeptical people that we somehow have to digitalize our processes. That's kind of the starting point.
Okay. And so how did you approach the initial proof of concept project then?
Yeah, the proof of concept kind of was made with a use case. We decided on a first use case, the autonomous process control use case, where we tried to figure out what quality losses we have and where the reasons for these quality losses come from. Why have we chosen this line or this use case? We have 13 lines or 3 different factories in the US, 1 and 2 in Europe, where we produce the same product. And it's kind of labor intensive because of the quality checks. And yeah, we kind of knew, okay, that could be a good use case, that we can reduce labor, but also reduce yield loss or quality loss. And we started, I would like to highlight a little bit, we started in Switzerland by collecting data with a USB stick, actually. So we would go down to the line, load the data on a USB stick, load it up to an Azure Blob, and then stream it to Ean AI to, first just visualize the data. And with this visualization, we could convince our management and our colleagues that you can gain so much knowledge about visualizing data, gathering data, making sense out of the data. And that was kind of the approach.
Okay, so let's explore the implementation itself a little bit then. And I know Pugal in particular is interested in the kind of interplay and how you decide where the line is between the edge and the cloud. I don't know, Pugal, do you want to just ask Jessica about that a little bit?
Sure. Thanks, Jessica. I think that was a pretty good summary of how you guys got started. Again, as Hamish mentioned, one of the questions which keeps coming up in every meeting we have with customers, where do you draw the line between edge and the cloud? Because both provides compute capability, and you have options to do stuff on the edge versus cloud. How did you guys draw the line, and what was the rationale behind that? And what is your plan as well, short term, long term, from edge cloud point of view?
Well, how we set everything up was, first of all, we had to make sure that the IT/OT segregation was in place. And that's actually not the case for all the subsidiaries. So let's take Switzerland out for the moment because we don't have this segregation, but let's focus on Stratham in the US. They already had a nice IT/OT segregation, was kind of mandatory. And we also had there an IT gateway where we could gather the data from the SPS, PLC, sorry, English PLC, and stream it. They streamed it to a data storage back in the days, and that was kind of the basis. But now with having new tools in place like HighByte and Snowflake, we were able to have a local instance of HighByte and stream the data to a global instance of HighByte, and from there further to Snowflake. So that's kind of the segregation of the edge component and then the cloud environment. So far we are not having any use cases where we really need the data to be provided on the edge and then get a feedback directly to the line. For us so far, it's real time enough to get a feedback down to the line by going all the way up to the cloud and sending the feedback back. But it would be, we have the virtual machines on the edge available. So if there a use case where you have a very fast response, the architecture would be set up that we could do that.
Yeah, that is super cool that you're able to accomplish near real-time use cases directly in the cloud in a Snowflake environment, and plants can still consume all the analytics and data points. Maybe I'll have one other question before handing it over to John to extend pretty much what you talked about, because again, the analytics and the results you get in the cloud is only as good as the data you capture at the edge, and contextualize the data, normalize the data. What is your experience in that area within Lindt? Was it easy, or is it tricky? You need some special portfolios to accomplish it? Because at the end of the day, you have a whole bunch of data sets coming in, IT and OT, as you mentioned, completely different types of data types, data quality. One is time series, another is not time series. You need to bring this together, even for a quality initiative you talked about. You need to bring this together accurately for you to get deeper insights to understand why one facility is producing better quality versus other. Simple use cases like that. Can you talk about how you went about fixing the quality issues, if there was any, and also around contextualization at the edge all the way to the cloud? I think I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I have to open that a little bit more, that you can understand between the POC we had and the overall cyber physical system project. So what we did in 2019 was a digital scan, so that we had an idea how mature we were in the different sites. And for every side, it was kind of clear that we have to have a platform where we can store the data. So that was one part we needed to build. And then the second was the proof of concept with the autonomous process control, where we said, okay, let's find, after we gathered the data via USB stick, we have to professionalize the way we work. So that's when we reach out to 3 different vendors, and one of them was Novotech, and Novotech was then saying, yeah, actually, you have to work with HighByte together. And the reason to why they said you need to work with HighByte was because when we had a look at our data, it was kind of a mess, if I can say it that way. So what we did is, at the very beginning, we said, okay, let's contextualize the data. Let's make sure that all the factories have the data structure in the same way, and that we can reuse the instance catalog and the model catalog to address a sensor value to a model which been addressed to an instance, so that we can reuse what we are building. And that was actually when HighByte was addressed, and that's where we store how we store the data now in this very contextualized way and structured way.
John, could you maybe just come in there and just give us the HighByte perspective a little bit there as well?
Yeah, I think Jessica really summed it up well in that, and we see this with many companies, is that their data on the factory floor was put in place for process control. They've got factories across many countries. They've got equipment that comes from many different countries, many different vendors. And their challenge is, in order to scale this out, we need to standardize the data. We need to standardize the data sets as we move it to the cloud, and we need to contextualize them. So that's a piece that HighByte helps the Jessica and the Lindt factories with doing that, so that when they land it in applications like Snowflake, they can rapidly use it and scale things out. So I think that's a great approach that she took, and I applaud that they, and we also hear a lot that they start off with a very manual approach, and then they say, we need to scale this out. And so then they started to look for partners, for technologies that could do that. And fortunately, they came across our partner, who's our go-to-market partner in Europe, Novotech, and they were able to advise them on that. So it's a great story. Yeah, keep going.
I could make a very simple example. We have, let's say, 3 different fridges along a line, and we would have a temperature sensor in every fridge. So how can I now compare one sensor in Switzerland with one sensor in Italy and one sensor in the US? And how do I know if that is the temperature sensor of the first fridge or the third fridge?
Right.
So that's where the advantage comes into place, and also how we can compare line performance. Because back in the days, I would have to call the US and say, what's your temperature settings on this line, because you produce the same product, and was that on milk or was that on dark chocolate, and it would be so complicated. But now I can just say, okay, show me the temperature sensor of the last fridge of those lines, and you would see it. You could compare it easily. And that's the beauty of like take your time and make this unified namespace, contextualize your data, make a structure. And if you have that, that's going to be so much easier. And it can be used for several use cases. It can be used for the autonomous process control use case, but you could also store this data on a long run into a Snowflake, add additional data and make a predictive maintenance or predictive quality use case out of it. So the data can be used for several use cases.
Right. So, Jessica, on this topic, I think you mentioned a bunch of things. I would love to unpack this a little bit, to go into a little bit more detail, because for this kind of initiative, we all know that you need to establish this namespace, unified namespace, with accurate contextualization, starting from the edge, going into the cloud. I think that's one journey. I think you already mentioned it. I would love to go deeper into that on how did you go about setting up this namespace across different facility? Because as you mentioned, a fridge is a fridge is a fridge. How did you guys go about it? Obviously, there are exceptions to that rule. I completely understand that. That is one. The other part of it, trying to understand the role of these two major portfolios involved here at the high level, which is Snowflake and HighByte. For this kind of initiative, you go about with connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, however you do it. It seems pretty apparent that it's connect, collect portion is handled by HighByte with accurate contextualization, normalization, as you mentioned, and store, visualize, analyze is happening in Snowflake, and that too, it's happening in near real time, which is really good to hear for me coming from Snowflake, because cloud, you don't do a lot of near real time use cases. This is super cool that you guys are doing it, and we are able to support it. Having said that, can you go a bit deeper on how we went about setting up this namespace? Because it's not just pilot. You have to think through this from broader production scale across multiple facilities. Love to hear that from you. Obviously, John, please jump in. I'm sure you have perspective as well.
Yeah, we worked at the beginning very closely, and still we work closely with Novotech as well together. Got some expertise there because we were a little bit afraid at the beginning that we make mistakes. You always are afraid of making mistakes, but Ulf from Novotech said, "Don't be afraid. You will rearrange things maybe 10 times, maybe 20 times. Just come with a draft." So what we started with, like, okay, we have Lindt US. Then we said, okay, we have Stratham in Lindt US. Under Stratham, we have an area. Under the area, we have a line. Under the line, we have machine parts. And under the machine parts, we have different sensors. So we kind of draw a tree of a line. And we always kept in mind what other lines do we have? And does this structure also match the other lines? And if not, how could we rename it or optimize it that it would also match another line, no matter if you are producing a Linder truffle or a bar? And also with close work to our technology department, we kind of figured out a way how we could structure that. And then when we started really with the first line in Stratham, together with our partner DXC, who is implementing all the tools and the platform and everything, we kind of sat together in a room and then really modeled all the different tags to this structure we have defined before. And this is what then goes into HighByte. That's the way how we did it. But you know, we already have changed some things. We have rearranged something, or we have added some model catalog, or we have rearranged something. So I think the most important is that don't be too afraid and just try to structure it as you think it might be. But yeah, you can change it as well.
Are you putting in place a governance level from more of like a team, a governance team that makes decisions on changes
Yes.
as you because obviously you've got multiple plants with, as you said, multiple age equipment and whatnot, that you don't want to be ping-ponging back and forth, but you want to be agile as you've described. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's actually an ongoing process. We just said we'd like to be able, of course, to add new tags ourselves. So what we are now figuring out with DXC together and with our organization, how could we automate this process? Somebody want to add a new tag or needs to add a new model to the model catalog. And we agreed on, okay, adding a new tag into a model, that's something should be done easily and should be automized as much as possible. But adding a new model, that's maybe something that has to go through the eyes of a governance board. And that's what we are setting up right now. I think that's very important because otherwise your unified namespace will be not unified after a while.
Exactly.
And we want to keep that.
Yeah. Yep. It was interesting. So on Monday, I had the fortunate opportunity of having a tour of a Lindt factory, and it was very clear that I think there was a line from 2003, and then in another room there was a line from 2016.
Yep.
And then I think they also had an even more modern line that was going in right now. And just, if we all think about how technology has evolved, they also talked a lot about how their lean principles have evolved in their thinking around cleanliness and how they could design the equipment to be able to be cleaned and maintained much easier. So that creates some changes. But then, as you said, then what we're creating is kind of an abstraction layer to still pull similar data and standardized data out of all those lines for multiple years and then aggregate it up to a central place and somewhere that someone like you can go in and say, as you said, what's the temperature on this line in this location, and being able to find that and not having all of the internal knowledge of that line and the exact tag, OPC tag or whatever that the data is stored in. So it's a fascinating approach, and it was really clear when we took that tour. So I applaud you for it, and it was great. Yeah. And at this point, can you talk some about how you've scaled this out?
Yeah, with the autonomous process control use case, maybe I can explain it from this perspective. We have decided from the beginning, let's have the 3 sides involved so that we can have the opinions of 3 different sides and people, and just make sure that we are inventing everything more or less right from the beginning. But then we expanded from these 3 lines, we expanded the use case to other and different lines as well. So they could profit already from the knowledge we had. And it was also for us crucial that let's go with DXC together to all the sites. Like we started building the platform, the global platform. Then we went to Stratham, built the local platform there, brought everybody together. As soon as the platform was set up, we started with the first APC use case. Then we went to the next factory, did the same there, built the local platform. And we could profit with every line we are rolling out now. We are in the middle of the rollout now. We can, or we have already the knowledge of the previous sites we have visited. We have built the unified namespace and set up the model catalogs. And we can take that and make sure if that still fits for the new lines or if we have to add something. So with every line you roll out, you're more advanced and more mature and faster.
Fantastic. So before I want to come on to speak about the results and start delving into what is this actually, what is the project delivering. Before we do that though, I want to make sure that everybody has a clear picture of exactly how this solution hangs together, right? I know there's another element which you haven't mentioned yet. Maybe you can just talk about that briefly, which is Ean AI, how that fits in, but also then how that the solutions from HighByte, Snowflake, Ean AI, how they kind of come together to create this complete solution. If you could just give us a kind of paint a picture of that for us before we move on to the results. Yeah, that would be useful.
Yeah, with the APC, we started with Ean AI actually before as I mentioned, USB stick. We started with that even before we built a platform or have HighByte installed, because we wanted to show results fast.
Mhm.
So we had the Ean AI platform, the cloud platform, already with the batch-wise collected data, and we could already do historical analysis of the process. So what we do now is we do it more real time. So the data flows via HighByte local, HighByte global into Ean AI, where we then can analyze the data. I'm coming to the results in a second. In parallel, we stream from the global HighByte instance the data to Snowflake, where it can be used for PDM or PDQ use cases. We additionally add to this data also into Snowflake maintenance data. When was the last intervention? What have they done there? How long took the intervention? Or we also add some data from SAP. What product was running at that time? So in Snowflake, we kind of capture everything to make the PDM and PDQ use cases. In Ean AI, it's kind of two parts. One part is just visualization. We see where we have a defect and what kind of defect, how often that defect occurs over time. And the second part is what caused this defect. So Ean AI has several tools they offer. What we use for the truffle lines is the analyst. So with the analyst, we try to make correlation between line mode, machine parameters, and the quality data. And what we reached so far is that we could reduce yield loss, so we could reduce the defects. And with reducing the defects, we have a more stable process. And we don't need manual quality control anymore at the line, because that can be taken over by a robot. So that's actually the use case, and the ROI you can imagine when you can save labor and yield loss. That's already very good.
And to what extent were you able to predict that in advance in terms of the investment, the potential return? Could you make an educated guess? Have you been surprised in comparison with what you thought originally?
We were not surprised, because that was kind of our prediction, but we were surprised how fast we could see or how fast we could visualize, and only the visualization could also help to understand the process better. That was surprising. And of course, with the AI, it's something you have to convince people. I think that's something not so easy, because sometimes the software predicts you something, and then technology says, yeah, but I cannot adjust this parameter. Yeah, okay, then you have to see why was that predicted, or do we have to change something on our model? So it's definitely, it needs some time to have all those values at the right place, and that the model is correct. But that evolved over time, but the ROI was not a surprise, actually.
Right. Maybe just to add to that, Jessica, to what Hamish talked about, currently you have this bifurcation where the data holistically is also maintained in Snowflake today, where it's not just your asset level data with contextualization provided by HighByte, but you're also bringing in broader work order data, possibly from SAP towards maintenance data. This leading into, I have two parts to this question, because as we all know, in manufacturing, traditional running production, adoption of AI has always been slower compared to a lot of other industries. But from whatever you explained, you guys are a little bit ahead compared to a lot of other customers we work with. I would love to talk to you about what has been your experience in getting that adoption happening, and there is some belief happening, system established at the boots on the ground level that, hey, you know what, this is not a fancy buzzword, it's real. That's one. The other one, now you have a largely contextualized data way beyond a certain OT level data from other IT systems in Snowflake environment. Are you leveraging AI capabilities, what we are providing, whether it is foundational AI or it is going to be LLM capabilities, stuff like that? What are your thoughts on that? Two parts to that question. I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, first of all, that's an ongoing process, actually. I still have to convince people. There is always someone in the organization who says, well, I hear things like, but we have not figured it out the last years. Now you are coming with this app and you say you can predict something or you can make a correlation we could never do. So it needs a lot of convincing people, explaining. Yeah, that's an ongoing process. And imagine that's people in my age talking or working in the same environment. But then sometimes you also have the management you have, or often the management you have to convince. And that's just you always have to dig a little bit and explain and show and show results and try to yeah try to show results and try to convince them. It's an ongoing process. And yes, we are definitely, for the second question, very interested in additional AI-based solution when it comes to predictive maintenance or predictive quality. That's something we are very interested in because along our process, we have quality data from the moment let's say the milk powder or the cocoa comes in until we deliver the chocolate. Along this whole value chain, we have a lot of measurement, but that still sits so far in silos. But if we could include all these data into Snowflake and then use artificial intelligence, better data models, whatever, to make prediction, to maybe, sometimes you have a constellation of components which you need a higher temperature or a lower fridge temperature or a higher pressure. That's all a black box at the moment for us. So every product has some values. We have to set up the line, but maybe that's not always the optimum, the best production setup. So we are very interested and willing to try that in the future.
Fantastic. You just mentioned management buy-in, and I want to ask you a bit later, whether you have some kind of specific tips on how to manage that, because this is always an issue for any of these types of projects. Before that though, I just wanted to, because I want to also talk about, get practical for the audience as well, and maybe give them some insight into how they can try and start replicating what you've been doing. But just on that people aspect as well. There's a lot of concern in the media and also among employees, obviously, that projects like this are going to lead to large-scale job losses because you're automating so much that used to be done manually. To what extent has that happened as a result of that project at Lindt? Do you think that is a valid concern? Maybe you can just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a very important and good question. And I know that people are very concerned about that. At least at Lindt, nobody got fired due to digitalization so far. I'm still here. I started to work in production at Lindt. And yeah, I'm sure some jobs will be taken over by new technologies, but others will be created. And when I prepared for this meeting, I was thinking about an example, and I have one from Switzerland. In Switzerland, the mail and the parcels, they have been delivered by the post. And when email was invented, you can imagine people were very afraid. So
Yeah.
now we don't need the letters anymore delivered by the post. So what are they going to do? Will they be existing in a few years? But then online shopping was invented. And a lot of people would start shop online, and the parcels need to be delivered. So it was a shift in what they deliver, and the post is still there. And of course, you could come up now and say, okay, but there are other examples less successful, like Kodak. You don't need a physical film anymore when you take pictures.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the end, especially when it comes to the potential chances and risk we will face with AI in the future, we have to take action and actively manage the opportunities. Because if we don't, then you end up like Kodak, and another company will take over because they will be more efficient, they will be more costly, they have less losses. So for me, there is no other way to take action and try to implement it. As Pugal said, I mean, the factories, the industry is often a little bit behind when it comes to new technologies, but I think it's definitely the time now to jump on the train and get started.
Right. Maybe just to add to that question from Hamish, and which you answered now, Jessica, love to hear your opinion or your experience on around the same topic. Now, for a traditional set of workforce, you're giving them next generation tools. What has been your obviously there is always process change, new set of training, learning to be provided to them. That has to be done. It's a given as part of rolling out of any new technology. But for somebody who has been on a plant floor 20, 30 years, and it took a huge amount of effort for them to gather data from multiple sources, Excel spreadsheet, which is what happens with most of the customers we work with, 99.9% of the customers. It's a time-bound activity, and trying to analyze the data, it's painful. Suddenly, you are giving them a tool which is next generation in nature. Did you see the kind of aha moment or results with those experienced workers, maintenance technicians? Because suddenly they can do a lot more with less. What has been your experience around that?
Yeah, I think we have not reached that point yet. Of course, the digital operations managers, we are closely work together in the sites. They definitely see the potential, but we have not been able yet to really convince, or maybe also we are at the beginning of this journey. We started in January, right? And Switzerland not even have started yet. So it's 4 sites at the moment. And it takes some time. We also faced that in Germany, that the guy said, yeah, but we want to also being able to do this and that, and could this software also provide this and that. So sometimes you have to give them something additionally that they can check or cross-check. Is that what this software says me or predicts me? Can that really be? And we have not reached that, but I'm sure we will in the future. I'm sure we can show people the value gain and the time savings they will have.
Yeah, because for them to leverage this kind of tools effectively, overall the digital fluency of the entire organization has to go up, because you are giving them amazing tools with AI and ML where literally you can predict what's going to happen. So for them to effectively utilize that fluency has to be there. So yeah, I'm sure you guys are working on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, yeah, sorry, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things that I love about this project, I mean, Jessica just kind of passed by. I don't know if anyone else caught it, but she said, "Oh, we started in January. Now we've rolled out 4 sites."
Yeah.
And what I love about this approach is they were really focused on a couple of key use cases, and then they're expanding across 2 different dimensions, right? They're expanding across a site dimension at the same time they're adding additional use cases, and it's just it's a great way to go because it allows them to prove things out, to deliver value to the business, but then to continue to add to it and to add additional use cases, additional value. And when I think about AI, the amount of data that we could collect and give to the manufacturing engineer, the quality engineer, is far more than they can process anymore. It's, it used to be they could check out one line, now they can look at all lines. So it's not that it's replacing people, it's enabling people to be able to analyze the data at when you have data at such a higher resolution, to be able to make so much better decisions. So this approach of rolling out across multiple sites, the approach of starting with a couple of key use cases and then expanding that, is just such a great way of undertaking a project like this, learning, evolving, and building it up. So just wanted to put that out there because I think that we just passed by some great information.
Right.
And
I think that pace is amazing, Jessica. The 10 months to accomplish from pilot to multiple sites, even if it is 4 sites. That is unheard of for me. I've been into so many of these
Yes.
Industry 4.0 initiatives in the last 10 years. So this is amazing how you guys have done it.
Well, I have to maybe add here, we had about a year to evaluate our implementation partner. I have to mention that here. So the organization was aware this project will come. So we took time there to evaluate the implementation partner, which was DXC at the end, or is DXC. And I'd like to highlight here as well, it is important that you have a good implementation partner. Work in a good way together with guys like you, Snowflake, HighByte, Ean AI. So it's very important that you have a good working relationship there. And I think also what's important, and we lacked this knowledge at the beginning in our sites, we could not find people with the skills we needed on the market because they would not want to work for Lindt. Like all these technical guys, also find a data scientist who wants to work for Lindt. So the only thing you can do is train people in your organization, promote people who are interested and willing to make a change. And I mean, I have this function. I'm just the bridge between the production, I know how to produce chocolate, and the technology. And this is maybe a key function, that you have people in your organization who are interested and who know the process, that you can match the process with technology. And you, if you have this fit with an integration partner together, I think you can do that in a year.
Yeah, fantastic. And I mean, yeah, I think it's also about taking, you know, aside from the convincing the management, it's about taking the fear out of the whole equation for a lot of people, and making them realize that, you know, new technology doesn't mean the end for them. It's just something different perhaps in the future. That their job is going to change, but it's not going to disappear. My favorite example about all this stuff is always, you know, when they invented the car, they didn't start going around shooting all the horses. So you know, it's an evolution, I think, is the point I'm trying to make. All right, I want to just cover very quickly all three of you to get some recommendations, because I'm sure there are people in the audience who you know, who are looking to replicate this kind of project. So if we can just get an answer from you on each of you on that, and then we move on to some questions, because we've got a few that have come in. So I'd like to get those covered off too. So maybe I can start with you, John. Just talk a little bit about, you know, in terms of your experience, what are the types of things that manufacturers need to do first, and what are the kind of potential pitfalls they should be aware of?
Yeah, so I think Jessica covered a lot of things, but to just kind of highlight some of the key things that we've already talked about, being focused on what are some key problems that we're trying to solve. Being focused on, we're not trying to solve everything, every total problem that we can do, but let's focus in on a few. She talked about finding an implementation partner, because someone that has teams globally that can support multiple sites and where their sites were. They can augment the Lindt team, because they may not have the team in place that has the experience or that has done these sort of projects in the past. And then, you know, taking the approach, I love her comment about her working with Ulf, and he said, expect that you're going to change. Expect that things will change. These sort of projects are not like deploying an ERP system 20 or 30 years ago, where you had to get it right the first time or else it would cripple you for the next 10 years. These sort of projects, the technology today is designed to evolve, to be agile, and to be able to change it. So the key is to get started and start working with it, and you will learn and assume that you will make some changes as you go, but get started and drive to value. So those are just some of the things that I take out of it and think are very pertinent things for other people to take out of it.
Great. Pugal, your thoughts on that?
Oh, definitely. I think obviously John, Jessica touched upon it. The number one thing is understand the business outcomes you want to drive for your customers, the value you want to provide. But that also comes with a price where you need to do some upfront work on digital maturity overall for your facilities, because large customers we all work with did not build these facilities on their own. It has been through acquisitions across different regions. The maturity of these facilities are different, even from very simple things as connectivity. It might not be that good depending on where you're working with. Lived this problem too long on finding out that, you know what, that facility has no connectivity. We have to work with carriers to telecom vendors to go provide that. So that is the second one. The third one also comes into the scaling up. Proving it at a pilot is one part of the problem. How do you scale this across 10, 100 facilities around the world? Usually the use case priorities are different between assembly plant to component plant versus a different, completely different setup out there. Understanding that and mapping that out, as John mentioned, the right partner, I cannot reiterate that because Jessica said it so well. You may or may not have that skill set in-house. You need to bring in the right partner, somebody like DXC, as Jessica mentioned. We have amazing working experience. Same thing goes for Novatech. We got introduced through John. Amazing teams out there. People like that make the difference. I would say walking in with eyes open on all these fronts, and the right set of use case upfront prioritization you do, understanding the digital fluency, maturity of the facilities becomes so important as well.
Fantastic. And I'll leave the last word to you, Jessica, before we go to some questions. Anything that you've learned as a result of working on this that you would pass on to other manufacturers looking to try and achieve something similar?
Yeah, I really liked as well what Gal just said with the connectivity. Really have a look at the very beginning of your connectivity. Make sure you have a proper IT/OT segregation, and if you don't, contact IT, cybersecurity. Very important topic. We haven't mentioned it yet. Make sure that that's in place. So I think that's something could be a pitfall if you don't think about that. And not starting at all. It's maybe the biggest pitfall you can do. You have to start, and that's what I would say. Yeah, start with what you have. If it's an Excel sheet, then start with an Excel sheet, but step by step work your way up and find a use case with a big loss. It can be a very labor intensive process. It can be a process where you have a lot of yield loss, or it's very time consuming. Find a use case where you can convince your management, and then I think, yeah, that's the basis maybe.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much, Jessica, and all of you. We're going to move on to some questions now for the last few minutes. So you were just talking about management buy-in and all the rest of it, and we have a question here which asks, how did you navigate any pushbacks, especially when it comes to the overall getting the overall investment and in terms of sending data to the cloud, that kind of stuff. And the same person also asks which vendors are you using for the edge part. But yeah, handling pushback perhaps first.
Yeah, I think we could avoid a big pushback because we have started with Ean AI very early, and even the data acquisition was very basic. We could show with the historical data that has potential, and that was kind of the door opener for us to avoid the pushbacks. And we also managed quite well to guide through this stage of finding the implementation partner. We informed our management quarterly, every quarter year, and we have been very transparent about the cost and about the roadmap. Even if we had some fails or delays, I think that's very important that you are transparent and just show also when you have some hiccups, or if it takes longer, as long as you can explain why it takes longer or why it maybe also costs more, then that should be okay. What was the second question? Sorry.
Which vendors you're using for the edge component?
Yeah, well, the connectivity part, we agreed on using Ignition, and then the next part is the local instance of HighByte, and we also have a HiveMQ instance on the edge level, and then the same HighByte and HiveMQ on the global level, and then in the cloud, Snowflake.
Okay, thank you.
I think the other thing, just
yeah.
to highlight that Jessica and the team did to get management buy-in is they did a proof of concept and they manually proved it out, right? She referred to it as, we use USB sticks to pull data and then run it through and prove it out. But then what they did was said, this proves out that the data will work for us. But now we need to find systems that will scale.
Exactly.
And we need to find systems that were designed to scale and designed for the scope of which Lindt is, which is a multi-site, large global manufacturer. And then they set off to define, okay, what is it that we need? Put out an RFP, talked with their consultants, talked with the people that they knew, and ultimately settled in on using Ignition, using HighByte, using Snowflake, using Ean, because they could provide that level of scale. So obviously you can't have people pulling USB sticks all day, every day to collect the data, but I really like how they were able to do a very small proof of concept, prove out that it would deliver the value, but then look for solutions that are designed to scale.
Exactly.
Perfect. And just in terms of that, the use case, just going back to that quickly. I'm not sure if you explained. If you did, I apologize. But somebody's asked about it. How and why did you pick that very first use case? Was it because there was a particular urgent problem, or did you think it was the one which would deliver the quickest win? What was the thinking behind that?
We have 13 linear lines across all the factories, so it's our flagship product.
Okay.
And it's also, if you have, it's quite a complex process to produce this product. And if you have a defect on the first step, that causes further defects along the line, and you have quality losses. And because we sell this product often, we want to make sure that the customer is always satisfied about the product. So it's one of the most important products we sell. And if we have a quality issue, it causes problems further down the line. So you cause more problems. And that's why for us it was kind of obvious. And yeah, we had some yield loss on this line, which was causing our management. And they said, well, why do we have OEE loss? Why is the quality not as it should be? So it was at the end driven from management.
Okay, and were you able to, because quite a few people are asking about ROI specifically. So how, did you really have to give very precise numbers? And was it in terms of, I don't know, cost saving or, avoiding downtime, whatever it was, at the beginning? How detailed did you have to be? Yeah, what was it that ultimately got the approval to go ahead? What do you think were the kind of the key ROI points there?
Yeah, we knew, because we do OEE measurement, we knew how big our loss was on that line, kilo-wise. Let's say we knew we are losing XYZ kilo per ton produced chocolate, final goods chocolate. To rework this chocolate, we have to put in labor, other process step, quality loss, and so on. So we could calculate this part of just what we would gain by reducing the defects, increasing the yield. We could calculate or made a calculation like best guess, middle, low guess, kind of. Yeah, if you have this number, that you can easily calculate that. And then we knew if we have a certain amount of quality, we can reduce the bad quality with a robot. But that can only be done if you have a certain amount of yield. If you are below, the robot is not able to replace it, the bad quality. So then you need somebody physically there. And that's also an easy calculation. If you can use the robot instead of a manual, a person, and this over 3 shifts, 6 days per week, you can make the calculation yourself. That's how that's the basic of the ROI calculation.
All right. Fantastic. Well, that's been a great discussion. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. It's gone incredibly quickly, but we're already at the top of the hour. So all that remains for me to do is to thank you, to Jessica, to John, and to Pugal for your amazing insights. Thank you also, of course, to HighByte in particular for sponsoring the session. It's those kind of sponsors that enable us to put on these events. So thank you so much for doing that. So everyone in the audience, don't forget we have the IoT World Manufacturing and Supply Chain Day coming up on December 4th. So if you haven't registered for that, please do. And I will see you there. And enjoy the rest of your Halloween evening. Thank you very much, everybody. And bye for now.